Okay, good evening and welcome to the September 26, 2017 regular school board meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Mr. Estheimer? Do we know?
Oh, he's excused. He's going to be late.
Okay.
I'll be here,
Mr.
though.
Freitas?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Present.
Mr. Koopser?
Here.
Miss Reed? Is
He
she?
won't be here this evening.
Dr. Pomponio?
Here. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Southgate Community Schools mission statement is Learning for Life. Vision statement is Southgate Community Schools, the best choice for students and parents. Any revisions or to the agenda or on approval?
I would like to pull the HR update from consent and put it onto action. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're approving the agenda with the revisions. So that's okay.
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the agenda with the revision of removing HR and moving it to action item.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Green, a second by Mr. Koopser. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to citizen comments on discussion or action items. Okay, seeing none, moving on to presentations. We have the first one being the summer school 2017 with Mr. Wolchek and Mrs. Kelsey Tackett. Oh, you said it there. Wait a minute. No, it isn't.
This one was the summer school.
I thought I had too much.
Is that, I want to make sure that that's close enough to pick it up.
I'm gonna catch everything. Okay, well, thank you for receiving me this evening. I'm Rob Wolchek. I'm the summer school principal administrator. I'm also the principal at Grogan Elementary School. I have been tasked with the Summer Slam program for kindergarten through 5th grade. It's a 20-day program spread out over the last part of June, taking a short break for the 4th of July and ending at the very early part of August. We have air-conditioned rooms for the children. There are 7 classrooms. And going back, our trend data, this is my second year as the administrator. The first year, last year, we invited about the same amount of people and had roughly the same amount of participation. And the slideshow or the PowerPoint presentation will kind of present that. So blasting off to our Summer Slam, the name of the program is in fact Summer Slam 2017. And it was held at Shelters Elementary School this year. Our Summer Slam philosophy, we believe, like we do in all of the elementary schools, that children are active learners and unique individuals. Children learn according to a developmental sequence, progressing at their own pace. Children learn by making choices, working with others, and adjusting to what they know. Children also learn best in a positive environment where they feel supported and safe. Our 2 content areas for Summer Slam were mathematics and ELA. Math was instruction. Our instruction was driven by students' incoming math benchmark scores that are used consistently at all 4 elementary schools. The focus was on hands-on materials and manipulatives, mirroring that which is often done in the throughout the regular classroom throughout the regular school year. Emphasis on Common Core language consistent with regular school year grade level lessons, and using some of the language of our new New York Engaged and Eureka Math. So all of our instructors came from our 4 elementary schools, and therefore they're familiar with the language that we're speaking, the new language, so to speak, that is consistent with the New York Engaged and the Eureka Math. English Language Arts, the instruction was driven by students' incoming individualized DRA score, which is a reading assessment score that at the end of the year, the students do a pre-test at the beginning of the year and then do a post-test. So just like mathematics, we used their year-ending post results as our pre-test, or this is our entrance level of reading. Hands-on activities, they capitalized on student activities or interests. The emphasis was on exposure to reading in a variety of ways. Reading, reading, and reading. Some general information. How do students qualify for summer school? It can be a combination of teacher recommendation and or parent request. Some of the indicators considered: students who are below grade level academically, some students who have poor attendance history, and some students who are in danger of retention. I'd like to share some of the stories from our summer school experience. This first SummerSlam fun fact: in a discussion with a summer school teacher, it was relayed to me that a particular student was having a good experience. This student had been prone to problems, both socially and academically, during his regular school year. I asked, "Why do you think he's doing so well in your class?" And she told me that the student had never been asked for help by other classmates. And he wasn't used to being that classroom leader, elevating the status of that student so that he had that feeling of success. A lot of our students are challenged, academically, emotionally, socially, the whole child, and whatever, this child felt that success, and that really elevated his status. His self-confidence and willingness to take chances can be attributed in some part to the relationship he built with the teacher from SummerSlam. A big part of what we do is developing relationships with children. You get more when you know what makes them tick. Another fun fact: a parent approached me as we were exiting on one of those hot 90-degree days to express her satisfaction with the SummerSlam program and the attention that her daughter was getting. I asked her what she felt was making it a good experience for her daughter. She stated, "The teacher is interacting with the students and making them feel successful." Once again, going back to elevating that student status. "My daughter can't stop talking about how fun the teacher is making learning feel." It's that perception that the students, they want to come to school, they're motivated to come to school. And again, with our targeted group at SummerSlam, that can often be a challenging event. Some of the data that goes along with our program: 148 applicants contacted from the 4 elementary schools, 103 students attended the ELA, the English Language Arts block, at least 50% of the scheduled days. 101 of the students attended the math block at least half or 50% of the scheduled days. We had 7 classrooms. They averaged 14 to 15 students per room. On the DRA scores, 97% of the students equaled their incoming DRA score. 38% of the students increased their DRA score by at least 1 level. One of the things that we look at is with our summer school program is to prevent that, what we would call summer slide, where kids are at home. Sometimes they're not real active when it comes to their reading and being consistent with what they were, all of those routines throughout the school year. And so that term summer slide is when those kids, through inactivity, not doing those regimented routine daily learning processes, slide backwards and actually regress. Our math scores, the math benchmark assessment scores provided by the teacher's classroom, the student's classroom teacher via a teacher input form. Post-assessment given at the end of the Summer Slam program. We use the math benchmark test. 97% of the assessed students demonstrated equal or improved benchmark assessments. Now there's 20 days of instruction spread out over the course of about 5 weeks with a little bit of a break in between for the 4th of July. It ran Mondays through Thursdays, and so even with Friday, Saturday, Sundays off, those little breaks, you try to really get as much information into those little minds as you can. So to me, this is a success. Where do we go from here? Individualized student summer school data shared with the child's homeschool instructor, continued use of our district assessments and our district initiatives, and focusing on social emotional learning and differentiation for each student. We want to continue to work on stressing the benefits of the Summer Slam experience to our parents. Communication, attendance, effort, attitude, and fun. All of those things that are incorporated into your regular school year and continued on through the summer program. Ongoing challenges, the homeschool participation factors, motivation for both students and parents, and then consistent attendance. Points of pride, providing continuing education to some of the most needy students in Southgate, coordination of services between our summer latchkey, our summer meetup and eat up, which is the food service program, and our Summer Slam programs. On days and sessions, we serve between 100 and 160 meals. Parent volunteers for breakfast and for lunch, helping to clean tables, police kids, reinforce what I term as our district's PBIS 3B policy, and that's the next bullet point in there, continuation of the elementary PBIS 3Bs, be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. Those 3 Bs were echoed every single day, and that would be consistent with what they were hearing in the halls of their home school. 34 students with perfect attendance. 4 of those students named were drawn on a random draw for a $50 gift card each for school supplies. And I've got feedback from 2 of those 4 parents, and they said that they were able to purchase a lot of stuff during the sales. And so the 2 that I spoke with both had more than 1 child, and they were able to get a lot of school supplies for all of their children. Student incentives were provided by the following community partners in education: Hungry Howie's, the Grenadier Family McDonald's restaurants, and Buffalo Wild Wings. And we were visited and graced by some of the folks in this room over the summer. It's wonderful. The one thing that I did leave out is 2 of the other principals made a visit and made rounds with me, and to see those kids light up when they saw their principals, not me, but you know, the other principals from their elementary schools, they, it's like Buzz Lightyear, I come in peace. They just want to come right to you and give you hugs, and it just motivates them to want to show up. So with that, are there any questions? It's a pleasure to be the summer school administrator, and I look forward to doing at least 1 more year. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can a parent sign up their student if they have average grades and just want to better whatever they have, if they're average or average to good student?
What we try to do is we try to set our classes with the most needy students, and at that point, if there were a couple of kids that added on, I had kind of a waiting list, and as kids either didn't show up or fell by the wayside, attendance-wise, I was able to make a few phone calls and say, hey, a spot has opened up, you've only missed 4 or 5 days. But those benefits, even those that abbreviated Summer Slam experience was worthwhile. So yes, they can.
That's good.
We have to be very careful with that because it's a Title I funded summer school, and we have to follow all the Title I legislation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Any other questions? Mr.
Thank you.
Gibson?
Thank you, Mr. Wolsek, for the presentation. As it relates to students that were recommended for retainage, was there another assessment given to the student at the end of the SummerSlam?
Yes, and both in ELA and in math, the assessments were given. The data points out that it doesn't look real impressive. Well, again, you're trying to prevent that summer slide. These are some of the most needy students in the elementary level, and some of the reasons why they are struggling academically can be far-reaching and takes more than a 20-day, 2.25 hour session 4 days a week. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then spread out over the course of 5 weeks. So we really wanted to set those students up for going back to their home school and in the fall, and carrying that success over, and that feeling of, I can do this. I was a rock star in summer school. Everybody there made me feel like $1 million, and I'm going to carry that over to my home school experience, and hopefully that is taking place.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Wolsek.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Mrs. Tackett, you next.
This is a normal occurrence every day. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'd also like to thank those of you that visited this summer. Although the power flickered and we had a unplanned fire drill and we lost water for a little bit and air, we made it. Yeah, we made it. So I asked the kids to come up with a name because we loved your name last year. So I gave the kids quite a few, and this was their best one, I thought. It's your world. We're just living it for 6 weeks. I mean, it's our world at the high school, and it's way different than the elementary school, but if you would have seen it, and I know some of you were able to see it, it's kind of amazing that we did make it through in those 6 weeks. It was a bit scary, but it worked. So we have 6th through 12th graders in our summer school program at Anderson High School, the 6th through 8th grade from Davidson, and the 9th through 12th graders at the high school. We did have a few Asher kids this year, which we usually do. Gabriel Richard, I also, at the end of the school year in June, send all the information over, and we usually have about a half dozen kids, and Trillium as well. So we did have a few representations from other districts. We also are lucky and blessed to have the food service. We did have construction in the cafeteria this summer, so we did move it to a classroom down the hall, and they were so grateful and very easy to meet and set up with, which I'm very thankful for. And we did it out of a classroom in the hallway, but the kids ate, and we were able to feed them breakfast before that first session, 7:30 to 8:30, and then when the second session got out, they were able to have lunch from 12:20 to 1:20. I don't think we would have as many kids as elementary, but the room was filled for breakfast and lunch every day, and they would go take their food to class on the way to their first session. So we did run from June to August as well. Ours is 23 days long, with the exception of the 4th of July. And our first session, which we call our AM session, runs from 8 to 10:25. They get a 10-minute break in that session, a 10-minute break in between, and then run the second session from 10:35 to 1 p.m. I'm Kelsey Tackett. I was the administrator. I have a wonderful secretary. Mr. Garland, our security officer at the high school, did have a procedure this summer, so we have our ISS coordinator, Mr. Markham, who stood in his place this summer and did a phenomenal job. And we have a part-time counselor who is our at-risk 9th grade counselor, Mrs. Olson. She does come twice a week and checks in with the parents and the kids and the teachers on all of our students. And we have 7 teachers, 6 of them full-time and 1 part-time. So I was blessed to have an Asher teacher come on board for the first time. He came over, Mr. Hansen, and taught math. The kids loved him. and they loved him, and they learned really, really well from him from an algebra class. I think that was a great mix to have over. Miss Romanowski was able to come back this summer, and she was able to get back with Davidson. And then we had a teacher from Huron, Mrs. Shastel. This was her second year with us, so she is from Huron and did math as well. Mr. Shively, his first summer with us, and Mrs. Zimmerman was a teacher from Canton at a private school. So she focused on middle school and high school and in her past, and came over and did biology and chemistry this summer. And then our top two, Miss Cameron and Miss Cieslik, have been with me all 4 years. So those are my golden teachers there. So these are the courses that we offer. An English and a math for our middle school. We generally have smaller numbers at the middle school level, so our numbers, we just run a 6th, 7th, and 8th ELA and a 6th, 7th, and 8th math, and kind of combine them and focus on all of those Common Core skills and standards. For high school, the left column is the classes that we offer as sit-down classes, which is where we had stopped my previous 3 years. So we would run an English 9, an American Lit, and Composition. That's our English 10 class. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry are freshman through junior math classes. Chemistry and Biology, and U.S. History and World History are those first set of science and social studies. And I, for the past couple of years, have had to turn a couple kids away because it just wasn't enough. The geometry and the chemistry would run at the same time, or the U.S. history and the algebra would run at the same time, but they still were behind a class or still behind a credit. And I thought, and I said, I have to be able to do something else for that kid. So I took our Edgenuity that Asher and the high school uses for credit recovery and through Asher, and we did online this summer. We were able to, I think I spent more time on the phone with them than I did my husband, but I got to set up a program through them. We were able to offer those 11 classes, and 29 students were able to enroll in those online classes and get a half credit for those. So it let them offer it in the morning where they couldn't have had it in the past, or maybe in the PM where a class doubled up. So we were able to expand our offerings, and with the online class, they did have to attend school. They could decide whether they wanted that morning session or the PM session, but they actually did have to come. I knew that if I just signed them up for a class and let them go, it wouldn't get done. The incentive for them was, if you finished it in 4 weeks, I would give you school-related absences for the last 2 weeks. So I tried to motivate them and tell them they could log in on the weekend or after 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, on a Sunday, and my earliest finisher was in the 4th week. So he was able to have, I think it was 7 school-related absences, but we also did have somebody finish during final exams on the last day. So it definitely ranged, but it was a huge success. So our student population, 107 students. We had 14 middle school students from Davidson, all within district, 93 high school students from Asher, Anderson, Trillium, and GR. So 64 of the students attended a full day, so from 8 to 1. And 43 students just attended the morning or the afternoon. And then there were 7 students who were more than 1 credit behind, and we expanded it for them as well. We let them take a morning class, an afternoon class, and an online class. So there were 7 students that had to complete that class entirely on their own, and all 7 did. We have our students in these classes for a whole semester and not finish it, so they busted out really, really hard to get that done in 6 weeks. So our statistics, there were 178 courses enrolled between online middle school and our sit-down sessions. There were 3 courses dropped per parent and student request after our first start date, and there were actually no failures. This is our first summer that I have not one failure. It's a huge success. Mrs. Olson, our counselor, is a huge part of that. The teachers are amazing, and we also got to hand out 4 diplomas. So that's rewarding in itself, just watching the kids walk out with it. I mean, there's nothing better than that, honestly. Our last piece is our finance piece. As Jill stated, we do have a lot with the 31A and are allowed to offer scholarships for our students and parents that are in district. So 102 courses. Each course costs $185 for an in-district student. Our courses for out-of-district students cost $200, and again, they are not eligible for the scholarship. So we use $18,870 of the $20,000 allotted for the scholarship. We also had 62 of those students considered 31A that took a second course. Those people did have to pay for the second course in full price at $11,470. And then we had students in our district that don't qualify as a 31A student. So they do have to pay full price for their courses. There were 4 courses, $185 each, so $740. We had 8 courses that were out of district, so $200 each. And then 31F, we had 2 courses, $185 each, which grand total of those 178 courses that were enrolled is that bottom number there, $33,050. So when our students apply for the scholarship and qualify, they give us $50 as a deposit. And the requirements in order to get that $50 back is to not have more than 4 absences and to pass their course. So when students go over the 4 absences, they don't get that $50 back. And when they get to 2 absences, we send a warning letter, and at 4 they receive the letter and the phone call from myself stating they don't get the $50 back, and that actually has boosted attendance quite a bit. The payroll side. So we have some staff that's Southgate staff, and again, some as EDU staff out of district or non-teachers or I guess everyday staff. So the Southgate staff is the first total there, $13,693. Our edu staff out of district, $11,568. Administrator with our grand total of $30,261. So if we take that tuition, subtract our payroll, we are in the green, $2,788.37. I've managed for the 4 years not to buy supplies. We just work with what's left over from the school year. Not always the easiest, but we have the paper, the pencils, the highlighters left over from the school year, and we have not had to purchase supplies in the 4 years. I know that that's not involving electricity or anything, but in terms of staffing and supplies, that's our grand total. All money was collected from the parents with the fees by week 2. So we are looking good. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I had the opportunity to come visit you when I finally found out how to get in the building.
Yeah, that was a tough.
It was it was quite an experience, and thank you for taking the time to take me around. I sat in on a couple sessions, and yeah, the students were focused, and the teachers that I interacted with were charged, and everybody seemed to have a good time. So I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for stopping in.
Yep.
Any other questions? I also wanted to comment that it was a nice opportunity to get to see what the students are doing and where they are in the building, and just that they were happy and well behaved during that program, especially when it was hot. So
yeah,
it was nice to have you take us on the tour.
Thank you very much. And we survived the instruction.
I think if you visit either of the summer school programs, you will experience a great sense of fun and engagement and enjoyment. There's a lot of camaraderie. We're all in this together, and I think that's definitely to the credit of both Kelsey and Rob. Since they have taken over the summer school programs, they have both blossomed. So we thank you both for your efforts.
And I will be back next year.
Thank you.
Was I invited? I don't know. Leave yourself.
Okay, Jill, are you next, or is it Rob? We have Rob on the agenda, so.
He is
wait.
next.
I can wait.
Doesn't matter, you can go ahead
so
since you're already up.
No, do you want to change the computer? No, he doesn't use. I'm just going. Is it okay if I just leave it up? I think this is going to be really late, so I'm going to try to. Go ahead.
All right, good evening. I'll make mine quick. Master's ready to go. So just wanted to give you the kind of monthly construction update here, where we're at. I know a couple weeks ago after the last board meeting, I had a chance to tour the sites with a few of you guys. Hopefully enjoyed that and kind of show you what was done this year. So kind of giving you an update where we're at as we're trying to wrap up our summer work that was done this year. Looking at the report handed out, the budget summary, is continuously updated. We monitor this pretty much daily, weekly, tracking all the funds and everything that goes through there. So just kind of looking at, the current commitments right now, we're just under $17 million committed right now to basically just the construction cost part of it right there. So 84% of the bond is committed to date and being wrapped up now. So we are starting to kind of wind down with the work that we have. Looking at some of the work that was recently completed, really this summer, we had the two bid packs, bid pack 6 for the site upgrades, bid pack 7 for the building upgrades. Those projects are substantially complete. The contractors are going through now, basically doing punch list items, cleaning up things that weren't able to get done. There's a few items we're waiting on materials to still arrive, but we're working through getting that stuff done. But for the most part, the work's substantially complete. We're just wrapping up punch list items. The roofing work for 2017, we were in, I believe, 5 buildings this year. That work is all completed. We've had all the inspections from the designers. We've had the inspections from the manufacturers, given their warranties and stuff. So we're really just the roofing project. We're just wrapping up that now with final change orders and getting everything settled out. And so that's kind of the work that's been completed recently. Looking at stuff that's upcoming, as I mentioned, the main thing we're waiting on is a lot of the exterior doors. We had some delivery issues with some of the FRP doors on a few of the buildings, so those are still funneling in as we get the orders coming in. They are scheduling times to come in, a lot of evening work and stuff, and swapping out, door for door each evening throughout the week. Also going to start looking at working some weekends, or they have been as well too, getting stuff. So hopefully in the next 4 weeks we'll be wrapped up with everything. They're getting a big bulk of the stuff starting to come in now for the high school. So really we're hoping by probably mid-October to be wrapped up with that stuff, and really trying to get Clark wrapped up and off the site by the end of October is the plan. So wrapping those up, and then the punch list items. So that's kind of the work that we have upcoming for the next couple weeks. The photo there, I know this week, or for this update, I just showed one photo. I know it's homecoming week, so I was out walking it today, and I just kind of stood there looking at, I thought it was kind of cool standing looking at the new plaza you have there in front of the football field with all the new fencing in the background. You can see the press box for the new softball field and everything. So I just kind of showed that one picture a little bit bigger so you could capture all that. I thought it was kind of a cool view for anybody that hasn't seen that yet out there. Some of the short-term milestone tasks that we have upcoming. So really we kind of have 2 projects that we're working on right now through the design phase that's ongoing. So the auditorium lighting, we're looking at doing some replacement of the stage lighting in the auditorium at Anderson. We're working through design right now. We're hoping by middle of October to have that design completed. We had some meetings here this week, wrapping up, kind of getting everything incorporated into that, met with the staff that uses that, and kind of locked that down. So now the engineers are working to finalize that, hoping to get that out to bid in mid-October, and then bring that for board award at the end, probably the last meeting in November, get that awarded. And then with any luck, if material lead times and stuff works out, we're hoping to maybe start that work in December and be wrapped up in January. So that's kind of playing it by ear. Once we get it awarded, we'll be able to lock in those deliveries a little bit more firm and know for sure if we can get that done here before like the end of January. Also, we're working on Anderson roofing project. We've met a few times, come up with the areas of need at Anderson for roof replacements, and we're working on that design. The designer's working again to have that done by mid-October, get that out on the street to bid in December, and have that probably awarded at the December board meeting get a roofer on board. The Anderson roof project is going to be a fairly substantial one. We're looking at, probably in the $800,000, $900,000 range for the amount of work required at Anderson with those areas. So we have identified, there's probably 10 areas of roof on the building that we're looking at renovating, and we have a large sum of it that'll be base bid, and then we've had probably 5 to 6 alternates. So depending on how the pricing comes in, we'll just keep adding as many of the areas as we can to pretty much encompass all the work that we can fit within that budget. So that's kind of the work we're looking at, short-term milestone for the end of the year, a couple packages that we'll have in November and December for you guys to review. So any questions for you guys that I can answer here today?
Any questions? The doors at Beacon and over at Garish, are those fixed yet? Or are you guys still working on the security doors and getting the windows in?
As far as I know, I believe they should be wrapped up. I have not been out there in the last few days. They were getting them just about wrapped up, and I know they were going back doing some punch lists, but I think they're pretty close, but I can check on that for you.
Okay. The punch list, is that the list that we have for extra funds that we have? Or is that this miscellaneous?
Mainly it's the work that wasn't completed, that the architects or engineers have walked through and noticed things either not done completely or not done right or whatever. They note anything that needs to be corrected by the contractors. There is a few items that, as we were wrapping up, put on the punch list that were additional work, whether we wanted to replace something additional or stuff like that. So there are a few things that are added along the way that we're trying to do, but most of it's just work that didn't get completed that the architects pointed out on their walkthroughs.
Okay, and complete auditorium lighting design, is that just for Anderson?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing I happen to notice at Davidson in the bus loop, usually in the morning there's 2 lanes that go in that bus loop for drop-off.
Okay.
And I happen to witness, I don't know if they're new parents, but there's usually 2 lanes, and if it's early enough, you have 1 lane that's lighter than the other. So 2 of the cars just happen to come out and almost hit 2 of the cars, and they were kind of fighting, and I'm thinking, I don't think they're aware of it being 2 lanes in the morning, because in the afternoon for pickup, it's not quite like that. But I was wondering if there should be any lines or broken lines to guide some parents.
There's 2 arrows there.
I think it's in front and back, but not because.
I can take a look at it and see what we have and see if there's anything that we can look to do there.
Yeah. Okay. And then just one more question about the drop-off at Davidson in the big parking lot. I see that there's, it says the drop-off lane, but it used to be 2 lanes over that way, so I see parents kind of confused, and there some starting to fill up on the first lane. So is it meant for 2 lanes to go through, or is it just for the 1 lane, because it's just marked as 1?
I can help with that a little bit. The lane closest to the curb is a drop-off lane, and one of the struggles that we're having, and I know that the administration did send out some helpful guidance to the parents, which some parents, I think, are choosing to ignore, but the intent was that you could pull up, multiple cars could pull up, and you could let your student out to the sidewalk and they could walk safely to the building. I noticed that many parents still want to inch up in that drop-off lane and wait until they're right in front of the doors and let their student out there, rather than pulling in and letting them out all along the lane. And then the next drive over is really your exit lane. So you pull into the drop-off lane, drop your student off wherever there is an opening, and let them walk a little distance, that's okay. And then you safely pull into to the next lane and exit. We're still struggling a little bit with parents wanting to do that. While I have perhaps some parents listening to this in the viewing audience, another thing that I've noticed is that there are a substantial number of students who put their backpacks in the trunk or in the back of the car. And I know sometimes it's crowded and you have no choice, but if the students can have their backpacks on the floor at their feet when they get out of the car, they'll be able to exit the car more quickly, and we'll be able to unload a lot more quickly. So it's probably a combination of not being used to it and choosing not to like the opportunities that we're giving students to walk just a little bit further to the front door.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anybody else?
Any other questions? No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Hey, Mrs. Pastor.
All right, so I have the state assessment results that covers 3 through 8th grade, PS 9, 10, and the high school SAT results and AP results. So I have a lot of numbers, and there's some good news and there's some bad news, and I'm going to try to focus on something good on every slide. So just to remind you, when you look at Southgate assessment results, it does include all of our buildings. So Beacon and Asher would be included when it's appropriate. So here are our 3rd grade results, and where you see the green represents that we are above state average. This is the first time in years that we've been above state average as a district. So kudos to the 3rd grade results. I'm not going to read the numbers to you, but I would be glad to answer questions if, Mr. Craig, you have any questions along the way.
I'm full of questions.
I know
But
you
I'll hold
are.
it for the end.
Okay. So I also have for your pleasure how we've done over the last few years. So here, wanting you to look at the difference between how we've done in math since the 14-15 school year and the 2016-17 school year, and every single building up there made some gains while the state actually went down statewide. Here we have the 4th grade results, and we did beat state average in 4 areas. It does seem that Allen and Shelters have some strengths here in both 3rd and 4th grade. So the positive here is when you look at where Allen came from in 14-15 at that 52, went up to 58, and then up to 62, great gains there. And we are proud that Shelters came off the 0 in science and went to 5%. Still not crazy about 5, but we're staying positive. The 5th grade results, here we have, the highlight has to be that Grogan crushes social studies state average by almost double. And of course, there in math, we have some above state average results for Shelters and Allen again. Here, how we've done over the years, and Shelters in 2014-15 went from 27% up to 57%, so a 30 percentage point gain. In ELA, Grogan went from 32 to 42%, and also in social studies went from 36 all the way up to 43%, so some good news. 6th grade, here we have 34% in ELA is above the ISD average. Looking for that positive here. The 6th grade results were consistent. Trying to be positive. In 7th grade, we are above the ISD average in ELA. We are above in science, the ISD. 7th grade over the years really is fairly consistent, not some dips and some gains, but very little, not anything worth notable. In 8th grade, we have the social studies at Davidson above the ISD average. And the 8th grade results for math went from 15 and 14-15 up to, and then up to again at Davidson. Statewide, the gain was only 2, and we did gain 4 at the same time that the state only gained the 2. So the 11th graders, besides taking the SAT, also have the pleasure of taking the M-STEP for science and social studies. and this is how all the buildings did in science and social studies. So when you look sort of where we are in relation to state average as a district, and Anderson are very close to that state average. 4 and 5 away and 3 and 5 away. So we actually, as we are getting up in the grades, we're closer to state average, struggling a little bit at the middle school to be at or above state average. The 11th grade results, Beacon went from some zeros over the last couple of years to 17 in science and up to 8 in social studies. I want to remind you that Asher's numbers too are based on very few students. So there's about 14 or so students that took it from Asher, and I think Beacon had 11 last year, so very small percentage of students. Here is how we do versus the surrounding communities around us. And I think the highlight here has to be that when you look at where we are as a district at 48% in 3rd grade math, I think we have to find a way to continue that good work up through the grades there in math. We're very close to the surrounding communities in 3rd grade, and then we get a little further away as the students get older. Sometimes teachers have in the past been so focused on trying to teach the challenges of the Common Core, and that they've kept students on topics a little longer than maybe was necessary. And what they've done is they have unintentionally skipped content, which creates a bigger achievement or a bigger gap in learning. And so this year we're being very intentional at that K-5 level when you're looking at 4 buildings and staying on the same pacing guides so that we aren't leaving some content not covered. Here's how we're doing in science and social studies, and again, this is M-STEP results. So we have PSA 9 at the high school, and I did put how we did in, compared to 2016 and 17. So as the state goes from 2016, they gained 4 points. So they went from 868 to 872. Anderson gained 26 points. Also in ERW, which is the reading and writing, we did gain 20 points over the course of that year. PSA 9, or I'm sorry, PSA 10, the state did gain 5. Anderson did not, but we stayed consistent in reading, science, and social studies there. So here is the percentage of students that met or exceeded expectations. So there in the evidence-based reading and writing, you can see that we gained 5 percentage points in Southgate, and at Anderson 4 percentage points. So that represents a gain at both Asher and Beacon in order to get that up to 4%. But fairly consistent results. So I also included the mean, because I think this tells a little bit more about the growth rather than the percentage of students. So here I looked at, like, what did we gain from 15-16 results to the 16-17 results, and I put them in parentheses. So there's only one negative, and it's not a Southgate negative, it's a statewide. So as the state went down, we did some very nice gains both at Anderson and as a district as a whole. Here are the community comparisons with the SAT and the surrounding communities. Really want to celebrate how close Anderson is in that in the evidence-based reading and writing, only 3% off of the state. So here's some great success, except maybe the last one on the board, which I won't even mention. So students who score a 3 or higher are often awarded college credit And the reason I say often, because a college gets to decide. Some colleges won't accept 3s, all accept 5s, most accept 4s. So here, the students that scored a 3 or higher, there were 63% in English language composition. You can see the rest, 67, 87, 72. There were 211 tests that were given, and our mean was 2.95, so our average was 3 there. So overall, 64% of the students did receive credit. This is a great way to end this presentation. Here's how Anderson kids compare to Michigan students and the US students in the percentage passed on these assessments. This has to be a huge celebration. Those teachers are doing a phenomenal job preparing those kids to be successful on these advanced placement tests. So what do we do with these results? We do share with staff. We do analyze the results and look for patterns. And we do look at what curricular changes may be necessary. And that's why I did mention about the K-5 pacing guides for math. And we do continue to focus on good classroom instruction. So what questions might you have?
Any questions? I have a question, Jill, about the 2017 community M-STEP comparisons. With the way the figures were decreasing a little bit from 3rd grade up to 8th grade, can we maybe overlay some of the perception survey information that shows maybe changes in behavior or self-esteem, or can we just look at resources, outdated textbooks or assessments maybe?
So middle school math has had some consumable math textbooks that have been purchased with 31A money, so they do not have old materials. In fact, they don't have to spend much time copying them because they're consumables at that level. So we do know that junior high kids don't have their frontal lobe developed, and they are struggling with adolescence. We don't know what effect the possibility of teachers missing content impacts that, and so we definitely want to make sure that we are sending them to the middle school with all the core content K-5 covered. So we're going to continue to work on those skills.
And I want to make one comment about math. This is the 2nd year for the math specialists at Davidson, the 4th year. Okay, well we've changed the way that we are using the math specialists at Davidson, and requiring much more reporting back to Jill and I in terms of the data that they collected. And one of the aha moments from last spring was getting more common instruction and more common assessments, and the realization that we had some math standards that would have been considered 4th and 5th grade, that students were not demonstrating proficiency in the 6th grade and the 7th grade and the 8th grade and the 9th grade and the 10th grade. So for the first time in a while, we've had some focus in the district, and we've been able to determine that it's a common deficiency among a lot of our students, and we can actually target the benchmark, the standard. So then the next thing goes to, have we, inadvertently left out content in an attempt to cover everything that is presented in the Common Core standards? Is it a difference in the way we're delivering instruction? We've had conversations with our elementary principals. Let's now look at those places where kids are being more successful, and let's try to determine what's different. Is it a difference in student exposure prior to to starting school? Is it a difference in instructional materials? Is it a difference in content covered? Is it a difference in how we structure the school day? All of those sorts of things. So I think the fact that we have spent so much time the last 2 years trying to be common and have a common language and common expectations and common materials and all of those sorts of things, we're finally finding the gaps, and now we can start to look at the whys of those gaps. But that's the hard work, but at least there's some comfort in knowing that we're discovering some things. In the high school, it's very frustrating because we saw such tremendous gains a few years ago when the state test was the ACT. And we were doing all of our planning and all of our preparation. I see another teacher kind of grinning because you hear this in many, many places. If you were a district that did not have a lot of students previously taking the SAT, then suddenly, and very suddenly, the test changed to the SAT. It's a very, very different assessment. And so that's been frustrating because, again, Anderson High School had tremendous gains when we were monitoring our progress on the ACT. The test changed, and in some areas you see that the wheels kind of fell off. So there's been a lot of regrouping at Anderson again. I think they know how to do it. They just have to do it with a different assessment. I really would expect to see how they've applied the lessons learned. I would expect to see some pretty significant gains at Anderson next year if the assessment stays even remotely similar.
And I notice more parents getting tutors too for the SAT for the students too. Eisheimer?
Yeah, that was actually kind of the direction I was going. I know that we were trying to shine a positive light on the SAT by only being 3% below the state standard, but looking across in the comparisons, what do you think the strategy going forward? And I know that you're just analyzing these numbers, but the superintendent mentioned some of those possibilities. But keeping this SAT, I was just talking to Mr. Green about this. Apparently, there's practice tests. There's
So there's practice tests, and then students can actually log on to something called Khan Academy that customizes tutoring online for them and practice questions. I want to remind you that when Anderson was here in the spring during their school improvement presentation, they gave a released SAT, and based on those results, they did some power, it's not called a power hour, but they did targeted sessions for those students that were struggling in those subject areas. So I can't remember the title of what they called it, but they are looking at the data. They are giving them the tests, a preliminary test in January, and then doing some things to try to help those kiddos. We constantly are getting emails. Today, Eric Jensen sent out, here are 3 things you can do right before students take big stakes tests. And his #1 thing said that students are mostly anxious about the test, and if we give them 10 minutes to write about what they're anxious about before their test scores go up an average of 9 or 10 points. So sometimes it's something like that, like a brain dump. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but if you get rid of that anxiousness, then you can focus on what's going on the test. So we are constantly looking and reading about those things too that are released from the researchers, as well as just good classroom instruction.
Thank you.
One other question about the online testing. How long have we been doing that? Is it just 1 year?
So that was 3 years of data for the M-STEP, and we have been taking it online the entire time.
Okay, has there been any increases because of that, or any improvements on that?
So it's hard to tell necessarily. There are districts that have been using NWEA, iReady, performance series type of online assessments. So if you're a district that does something like NWEA and you begin that testing in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, by the time your students get to 3rd grade, this is, oh, we've done this before. This is common procedures. And so they understand some of the nuances of online testing, the drag and the drop, the touching, the scrolling bars, and those kinds of things. This is the first year that our kindergartners, 1st graders and 2nd graders are taking those online MDE assessments. Today was the first day we got to see some results, and they are very detailed and are going to give us some really good information. So we're pretty excited about what we have so far.
And we did add extra computer instruction for grades 3, 4, and 5. We have limited opportunities to add to the, the instructional day, but we did add as an enrichment class for those grades, really to target our ability to expose our students to more online testing, because the skills that you have to have for this kind of testing are pretty challenging. And if you are not a student outside of the school day who's had a lot of exposure to that sort of thing, it's not an easy task with the little ones.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Pastor. Okay, moving on to committee reports. We don't have anything for the anti-bullying. And for finance, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to, we don't have anything yet.
There's been no meeting since last.
Okay. Policy. Mr. Green and myself are finishing up some, excuse me, some policy work that will be reported on October 10th. Curriculum, Mr. Freitas, Ms. Pastor, and myself reviewed the finalized Southgate District Curriculum Agenda and Textbook Adoption Calendar. Our next meeting will be October 19th at 4:30. And personnel?
We did not meet this month, as we previously discussed. We will be meeting next month. I will get with you and Mr. Moore, probably the first Tuesday at 4:30 would probably be, but we'll double check and have a meeting, okay?
Thank you. And grounds and maintenance, the next meeting will be October 10th at 6 p.m., so that would fit in good with that meeting. Moving on to discussion, finance report, Mrs. McLaughlin.
We're still continuing to wrap up the 2016-17 year end with the mounds of reporting that we have to do. And it's with a lot of the reports, they've advanced the due date, so we've had to juggle that a little bit more than in the past years, with making sure also everything and everybody is in the right place for the new year. I will have some preliminary financial information for the 16-17 year at the next meeting, and our auditors will be here on October 24th to give the final report. So I'm just going to do an overview and let them discuss the details. Also, we've had to, the state has mandated some changes with some of their systems. If you look at the dashboard that Mr. Kokoski provides, it says to go to buyformichigan.com to look at our bids. Well, that discontinued as of last week. So we've had to register the district for a new website. We've had to request access for various areas. What they're trying to do is consolidate all their areas of payment and access into one website. So it's been a process for us as well. So when we go to do the roofing bid, it'll be interesting to see how that works. And I did want to report, over the last 2.5 years, one of my areas of focus has been on the outside booster clubs and PTO groups that have been operating under the district's federal ID number. So a year ago, with Mr. Pinkowski's help, we got all the athletic groups on the internal accounts at the high school. And last year, I focused on the elementary PTOs, had meetings with all of the groups, and two of the schools are now under our internal accounts, and I've worked with the PTO groups and the building administration to make sure they have the proper paperwork to facilitate the procedures. One of the elementary schools did go on their own. They have, as of this date, have their own federal tax ID number, and they have the completed approved tax exempt status from the IRS. And the 4th elementary school is still working on that process. So I feel we have much better internal controls over those groups, and I think we're almost complete. I have some some guidelines that I'm going to distribute to the groups just as a general information so that things are consistent throughout the district. But I think we're finally there, so that's it.
Mr. Craig?
I have one question. If they have their own 501c3, do we still hold their funds? Or
No.
they are responsible for their own funds then at that point?
They're responsible for their own funds, and once they sent me documentation to show that the account that was under our federal ID number was closed, and then they opened up a new account under the new federal ID number.
So they're
it's-
essentially responsible for themselves at that point?
Yes,
And have to abide by all the laws on their own? We don't protect them to that point anymore, right?
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Is there an annual reporting requirement for in the guidelines at all to let you know what they're doing with the money, or does that?
The ones that are on their own, or, I can ask for a report. Since they're on their own and they have their own tax ID number and they're tax exempt, they do have to, there's two filing requirements. Every year they have to file an annual update with the state of Michigan as being incorporated as a nonprofit in the state. And it's basically just telling the state who the officers are, who the resident agent is, which is whoever they assign to get communication from the state. And that's a form that they have to fill out every year. And that's available on the state of Michigan's website for anyone to look at. Also, with the IRS, in order to keep their tax exempt status, they're probably at the lowest level, which is revenue that's less than $50,000. They still have to do a filing online. It's called a 990N. That just basically tells the IRS, this was our total summary of our revenue for the year. It's just answering a couple questions, and it takes 5 minutes to do online. But that is required every year. If they go 3 years without submitting that, then they will lose their tax exempt status.
And they are still required to follow all board policies
Yes.
and administrative regulations.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I have one comment, because I was just thinking about 3 years ago when Teresa and I put on our to-do list to clean up all of the wide variety of procedures among our booster groups and groups that had external checking accounts that we didn't know about. And I remember thinking that we would never, ever get to that. And Teresa was able to get to it and accomplish it. And I hadn't thought about that in a long time. So that was a lot of work and I know 3 years sounds like a lot to everybody else, but that was a lot to really have all of the parent support groups absolutely conducting business the way they should be.
That's good.
And they were all very receptive and supportive of the information I provided to them, the reasons why they had to go one way or another, and with the building administration, it worked out very well. It did seem like a pretty daunting task 2.5 years ago when I got turned away at almost every bank and credit union in the city of Southgate to try and at least just get a list of the accounts that were under our federal ID number. And I couldn't because I wasn't a signer. That's the bank's rule. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but we did manage to accomplish what we needed to.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, curriculum report, Mrs. Pastor.
I was just going to talk about those MDE tests for the K-1-2s, and I did that, so thank you.
Superintendent report, Mrs. Creation.
Before I talk about the professional development that is on my list today, I just want to remind everybody to please join us Friday for the homecoming celebration, and if you can stop by the Anderson facilities about 5:30, and just to anyone in the community to come, and I think the weather's going to be nice, to just walk around and view some of the new athletic facilities and the updates to that space. We hope to have a big crowd. Even though we're only a few weeks into school, we have been heavily involved in some professional development that I wanted to share with you. On the 14th of September, there was a group of math teachers, I think probably about a dozen, who received some training in something called Algebra Nation. That is a resource that is normally fairly costly, and for 2 years now, the state has been funding this. It's a one-stop resource that's aligned to the Michigan math standards for Algebra 1. Students and teachers can access instructional videos. They can get homework help. This is one of the really cool parts of it, is that students log on and help each other with homework, and they're monitored by a math instructor who steps in only if the math help seems to be going in a direction that wouldn't be helpful to the students. There's also practice assessments, and teachers have access to other math instructors and activities and resources for free. There is a workbook that goes along with it, and we were able to get those for free. So that happened on, like I said, the 14th of September. Teachers from Davidson, Anderson, Asher, and Beacon all attended, and within a few days I just happened to be in the buildings and saw them already using it, and the math teachers are giving it high grades. So it's called Algebra Nation. On the 21st, that was our half day, all K-12 teaching staff received some additional training from the Center for Educational Leadership, and that's the group that sponsors the 5D rubric for teacher evaluations. This time, teachers received specific training in one of the domains that's called purpose. And this is a very fundamental part of instruction, and this is where we talk a lot about learning targets, how they're connected to standards, how they're linked to previous and future lessons, and how they are linked to a broader purpose and transferable skills. It also addresses how well or not we communicate those learning targets to students, with a lot of frequent checks for understanding. The domain of purpose also includes something called the design of a performance task and success criteria. These are sort of new ideas for many of our teachers, but the big ideas are that teachers learn to plan lessons around 3 big questions. What do I want my students to learn today? That's a question we've been asking for a long time. How will they demonstrate the learning? And then the final piece is, what will it look like if they're successful? And so that's some pretty intensive training that our teachers had indicated they needed some additional support in. On the 22nd and the 25th, building administrators participated in some training from the same group, because now the administrators are doing the observations and are doing the evaluations on the teachers. And they participated in something called calibration training. And this training helps the observers, that's the administrators, to identify bias when they're coding the teacher observations, to be very clear about what each of those indicators is supposed to be focused on. Am I supposed to be looking at what the student is doing, what the teacher is doing, or what both are doing, and to have a common understanding of how those indicators and the evidence support being included in the observation. The training is intended to, and was very successful for our administrators, it's intended to increase something called rater reliability of our administrators, and that means that when observers, when you're observing instruction and using a rubric, that to observe a teacher's lesson, that they consistently score each indicator in alignment with what's considered expert raters. It was pretty intense training for 2 days, amazing conversations on the part of our administrators, and our rater reliability from pre-test to post-test improved dramatically. So always hard to be out of the building, but some awesome professional development for our teachers and administrators over the last couple of weeks. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. So, board president update. I don't have anything at this time. Are there any citizens' comments? Okay, moving on to consent.
I make a motion that we accept consent item K1.
Support.
Can I add discussion at this?
Not a consent.
Not a consent?
No.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Green and a support by Mr. Craig. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to action. Item number 1.
This is a request for an out-of-state overnight field trip to Tennessee. This is for the VEI program at Anderson that Ms. Barledge is the teacher for, and you've had, students from this program have presented to the board before. This is to attend the Southern Regional Conference in Tennessee, and you've approved this, this trip before.
Okay. So, does someone want to make a motion?
Make a motion.
Mr. Estheimer, can I have a
Make
support?
a motion to approve the request for an overnight out-of-state trip for the VEI program at Anderson to attend Southern Regional Conference in Tennessee.
Support?
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Estheimer and a support by Mr. Craig. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to action item number 2.
This is another overnight out-of-state trip, and this is for DECA, also sponsored by Mrs. Barledge, and they are going to New York this year in December. They have gone to different locations, but the experience is something that you have approved many times in the past.
I make a motion, Madam President, excuse me. I make a motion to approve the request for an overnight out-of-state trip to DECA program at Anderson to attend the 2017 conference in New York.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Green and a support by Mr. Estheimer. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to action item number 3.
This is a request from a volunteer who wishes to participate as a volunteer in one of our athletic programs, and because of some previous convictions, they are not, by board policy, they're not able to volunteer without board support. There have been 2 parent volunteers that have brought their case to the board in the past. This application is supported by the athletic director, by the head coach, and I did include in your confidential information unsolicited letters of support from a variety of people, including a previous supervisor, previous coworkers, and previous coaches.
Madam President,
Mr. Green?
I would like to abstain on this item on the following grounds. First, on numerous reasons. Number one, I do know the person in question as a friend. Number 2, I have personal knowledge of this situation before it happened. Number 3, the letters of recommendation are people that I know. And finally, I made it very clear when I ran for the board that any item that would directly involve the varsity football team, of which I am a volunteer coach also, that I would abstain myself for conflict of interest. I do not feel that I would be objective voting in this manner due to all those reasons. If anybody feels differently or has comment, I'll be welcome to hear it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the volunteer application as presented.
Support.
Okay, any further discussion? I have a motion by Mr. Estheimer and a support by Mr. Koopser. Do we need a roll call, please, Teresa?
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Estheimer?
Yes.
Mr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Green abstain. Mr. Koopser?
Yes.
Dr. Pomponio?
Yes. Okay. Motion carries, thank you.
Item action. We added action for
Yeah.
point of order.
I wasn't finished.
I'm sorry.
Action item number 4, Human Resources. approval.
I asked to pull this from the consent agenda. We generally let these slide by on consent. This one, however, I don't think we can. And acknowledge the first name on here, which is our superintendent, Ms. Cretion. I don't want to move this letter. At some point, I'm going to have to, but I want to say thank you for your time here. It's not done. We still have you for a little bit, but thank you for what you've done, and I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
I would like to concur with Mr. Craig. Over the past few years, I first met Ms. Cretion when we were working on the bond issue, and over the last couple of years, it's a daunting task, and we don't always agree. Her and I don't agree, the members of this board don't agree, but her service to public education, her service to the school district as the principal of Anderson, her service to the school district as a superintendent, and we're moving in the right direction. And it's going to be hard to replace her in December 31st. Come January 1st, 2018, when hopefully Michigan's in a New Year's Day bowl game, and she'll be very happy. I wish her the best in her retirement and thank her for all the hard work she's done in this district and in public education.
Mr. Estheimer?
Leslie, thank you so much for your service to this community. You know, I've been obviously only on the board a short time and involved for a short time, but you know, first taking on the bond issue and then overseeing this whole construction process with Rob. I've been in organizations that have taken on half that, and I know it's a daunting task, and you've handled yourself professionally and well during that whole time, and somehow kept all those balls in the air, and I don't know how you did it, but thank you so much for your service.
The construction was a lot of fun, to say.
Rob, do you feel that way?
Thank you. It's a great district. I'm glad that I got a second chance, and it's been a lot of work, but it's been very, very satisfying. So I'm very pleased to have been associated for so many years, and very happy to be a Titan.
Any other discussion?
Madam President, if I could just say thank you. I appreciate your dedication, your passion to the district, to the students, and your constant professionalism, and your being a thought partner as it relates to how we want to move the district forward. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And I just want to say that, you know, there's a lot of ups and downs, and this district is I wrote something, but I didn't bring it with me, but this district is a large district, and whether you see that we are proud of everything that you've done and how you've handled yourself with all the different groups and board members and all the parents, it's a big task. So I recognize that there's a lot of different hats that you have to wear and a lot of different things that you have to be strong for. So good and bad, you know, I see all the things that you've done, the 5-year plan, the details. So I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I begrudgingly move the Human Resources update.
And with that, I begrudgingly second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Craig and a support by Mr. Green. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to employee representatives. Are there any employee representatives at this time? Okay, information and announcements from the board.
I only have one. Ford Line is having their Watchdog Pizza Party tomorrow. Anybody interested in getting involved with the Watchdog program? It's from 6:30 to 7:30 tomorrow.
Mr. Green?
I'm probably stealing your thunder as Anderson's liaison, but of course it is homecoming week. I invite everyone, as Ms. Cretion said, to come out to the homecoming game, support the students, the parade, walking the facilities. Please note, if we win, I called a great game, calling the offense. If we lose, I didn't call one play. Thank you.
Any other information, announcements? I just have a couple. Good luck Titans at the homecoming game Friday, and good luck Beacon in the art competition in Grand Rapids Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the work session. Okay, we're going to review the draft submissions by the board for board goals. Okay, currently I had received goals from Andy, Mr. Green, Mr. Koopser with Mr. Estheimer, and I have some board goals that I worked on with, actually, me and Andy are working on. I haven't received anything from Mrs. Mossop. So we're going to continue to have this as a work in progress. So as we are just kind of getting everything together, I'm just going to put this aside and have all the board members kind of send it to me, what we're working on, so we can.
Do you want it on for work again?
We can put it
at
on
the next meeting?
work,
Okay.
yeah. And then also work session number 2, that's part of my goal with the processes and procedures, so we'll work on that in the next review of the board goals.
Madam President, so you want me to email you the goal that Jason and I were working on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that way we can put it all together for the next.
If you want me to do copies and put it in the Google folder,
Yeah.
then just send it to me, and
Send it
I'll
mine
just
too.
add it as part of the regular packet.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, thank you, and can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
I second.
Hey, thank you, have a good evening.
World record time here.
That's quick for us.
Yeah.